I'm 82 years old, and 6 months ago I sold the house my children grew up in without telling them. If you're expecting some dramatic revenge story, it isn't that. I didn't slam doors, I didn't cut anyone off, I didn't do it to hurt them. I did it because one morning I realized I was asking permission to exist in my own life. The house sat on Cedar Hill Road for 41 years. White siding, green shutters, a front porch that leaned just slightly to the
Never
left
bothered
because the
fixing it.
foundation
My
settled
husband
back in
Thomas used to joke that the
1998.
house had character. I used to say it had arthritis. We raised 4 children inside those walls. I measured their height in pencil marks behind the pantry door. I still remember which line belongs to which child. I could walk through that house in the dark without bumping into a single chair. After Thomas died 11 years ago, I stayed. Everyone assumed I would. It was the family home, the anchor, the place holidays were supposed to orbit around. For a while, it worked. The kids came for Thanksgiving, the grandchildren hid plastic eggs in the yard at Easter. Christmas mornings were loud and chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. But life stretches. Children grow, distances widen. Daniel moved to Arizona, too far to drop by. Rachel settled in Boston with a job she loves and barely leaves. My twins, Andrew and Kate, both live within an hour, but their calendars look like military operations. Somewhere in the last decade, visits became appointments. Let's look at the calendar. Maybe next month. Work is crazy right now. I understood. I truly did. I remember being their age. Busy feels urgent when you're living it. Still, I noticed something subtle. When they came over, they didn't sit the way they used to. They stood in doorways, they checked their phones, they commented on the gutters, the roof, the stairs. Mom, these steps are steep. Have you thought about moving closer to town? This yard is a lot for one person. At first, I thought they were being helpful. Then I realized they were being cautious. I wasn't their mother hosting dinner anymore. I was a situation to manage. The moment that changed everything wasn't dramatic. It was small and embarrassingly ordinary. I fell carrying laundry upstairs. Not a hospital fall, not a broken bone, just a slip and a bruised elbow and the sharp shock of realizing no one would hear me if I had screamed. I told Kate later, casually, like it was a funny story. By that evening, all 4 of my children were on speakerphone. Mom, this is exactly what we're worried about. You can't be alone in that house forever. We need to make a plan. A plan? I sat at the kitchen table staring at the chipped tile Thomas installed himself and felt something tighten in my chest. They weren't wrong, but they weren't asking what I wanted. They were discussing logistics. Within a week, Rachel sent brochures for assisted living communities. Beautiful places. Neutral walls, smiling seniors playing cards under soft lighting. I flipped through the pages slowly. Every photo looked tidy, safe, managed, contained. I realized something uncomfortable that night. My children were not trying to control me, they were trying to control their fear. If I lived somewhere smaller, monitored, predictable, then they could relax. But where did that leave me? Reduced to a risk factor. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I made a decision without forming a committee. I called a realtor. His name was Patrick. He walked through the house with careful respect. He noticed the original wood floors, the crown molding, the big backyard. He said, "This will sell fast." The words landed strangely, "will sell fast," as if the house had already begun detaching from me. I signed the listing papers 2 weeks later. I did not tell my children. Not because I wanted to shock them, because I knew if I told them, the conversation would turn into percentages and safety statistics and emotional bargaining, and I wasn't bargaining. The offers came within days. Young families walked through the rooms whispering about nursery paint colors. I watched them touch the banister like it was new. I stood in my bedroom the night before closing and ran my hand along the wall where our bed had always been. There was a faint outline in the paint from a headboard that hadn't moved in decades. I expected to cry. I didn't. The grief had already happened over years of quiet dinners and empty driveways. On closing day, I handed over the keys and felt lighter than I had in a long time. I didn't move into assisted living. I bought a small townhouse near the river, 2 bedrooms, no stairs, windows that let in morning light like it's something generous. It's 15 minutes from Kate, 20 from Andrew. Close enough. I furnished it with intention. Only what I loved came with me. Thomas's leather chair, my mother's china cabinet, a small round kitchen table instead of the long one that once needed 8 chairs. The first night there, I slept without the house settling and creaking around me. Silence can be lonely, but it can also be peaceful. 2 weeks later, I invited the children to dinner. I gave them the new address. When they arrived, confusion hit first.
"Mom, what is this?" Daniel asked. I poured water into glasses before answering. "I sold the house," I said calmly. 4 faces went still. "You what?" Rachel whispered. Kate looked hurt more than angry. "Why didn't you tell us?" There it was. I met her eyes. Because I wasn't asking. Silence stretched between us. "We were trying to help," Andrew said finally. "I know," I said, but helping started to feel like deciding. No one shouted. No one stormed out. They sat down. Dinner was awkward at first, then something softened. For the first time in years, they weren't scanning the room for hazards. They weren't calculating square footage or yard work. They were just there. Over the next months, something unexpected happened. They began stopping by without a project in mind. Kate came over one afternoon with coffee and stayed for 2 hours talking about nothing important. Andrew brought his son to show me a school drawing. Daniel called and asked what I was reading. Rachel sent me a photo of her garden and asked for advice. I realized something quietly powerful. When I sold the house without telling them, I stopped being the fragile structure they needed to stabilize. I became a person again, capable of change, capable of choice. Aging doesn't erase authority unless you hand it over. For years, I had been shrinking preemptively, saying I was fine before anyone could worry, laughing off aches, pretending the silence didn't bother me. Selling the house was not rebellion, it was authorship. It said, I am still writing this story. I sit by the river most mornings now. There's a bench under a maple tree that turns red in the fall. I bring a book. Sometimes I read, sometimes I just watch the water move. The children visit more now, not perfectly, not constantly, but differently. They don't manage me, they ask me. There's a difference. I don't know how many years I have left. None of us do. But I know this. I would rather live in a smaller home of my choosing than in a large one preserved out of nostalgia and fear. I loved that house, but I love being seen more.
I'm 82 years old. I sold my house without telling my kids, and for the first time in a very long time, I feel like the adult in the room again.